directed by Fritz Lang, who is one of the great German expressionist filmmakers. And this was before Peter Lorre fled Germany. I mean, this is just on the cusp of the Nazis getting into power.
Mhm.
And during the Weimar Republic, which was the republic that existed between the post Czar Germany following the First World War and the rise to power of the Nazis in 1933. You had this Weimar Republic, and there was all these serial murderers in there for some reason. Now,
Yeah, it's
maybe we just didn't hear about as many under the Nazis, or maybe during the First World War we were distracted, but I wouldn't be surprised if some of the social conditions enabled it in some way, or gave rise to it. It's one of those chicken or egg questions.
right.
So yeah, in the book, I essentially write about the serial killers of Weimar Germany that inspired the conglomerate character of Hans, who is a serial child murderer in M.
You wrote about all these guys in context of this film, but Carl Grossman, I think, was the one that I was it really turned my stomach probably the most. I mean, you go into really good detail, and not in like a gratuitous way, but I mean, you explain why these guys are just heinous serial killers, and you explain the crimes. But Carl Grossman, the Butcher of Berlin, to be getting off a train and have this guy selling sausages, and then like, oh, these are particularly meaty. They're pretty
Yeah.
delicious. I can't believe that story. And just thinking about how these people, when they picked up their picked up their newspapers and the news of the day, and they're reading, and they like they're horrified that they traded a Deutschmark or the currency of the time for this sandwich that was laden with extra ingredients, so to speak.
Yeah, there was a turning point in Grossman's business because obviously there were famines and such. This is during the Depression, which particularly hit Weimar Germany badly. They had massive inflation. Then these are the conditions which ultimately one could argue gave rise to the Nazis coming to power in some way. But there's a lot of poverty, and having like a meaty sausage was kind of a delicacy. So before that, he had these sort of like little withered things made of turnips and fillers with maybe a dot or two of meat in there so you could justify it to yourself. And then one day they suddenly plump and juicy, like, oh, where does this meat come from?
Favorite
And
movie. And
I
so,
can't believe I'm
reading about the New Jersey shark attacks of 1916, I've read other books that delve into that case, but man, the New Jersey shark attacks of 1916 that inspired Peter Benchley to write Jaws. You do a great job of documenting all of that and talking about just the terror that happened back then over 100 years ago.
Yeah, well, first of all, Brian, you are obviously a true cinephile because I love cinema myself. And so after I'd finished writing the book, I went back and I watched every movie in the book and I ranked them, which one is better because I thought I knew in my head.
Yeah.
And I believed that the crowning horror movie was going to likely be either The Exorcist or Psycho, both of which are amazing, incredible cinematic masterworks. And to my surprise, when all was said and done, it was Jaws sitting atop of that list because Jaws does not have a wasted moment in it.
No.
It is beautifully shot. The dialogue is always on point. There's no fat. The characters are great. It is genuinely tense. And I think it affected people psychologically and truly horrified them far more than any of these other films. Like, you might watch The Exorcist and go through a period of your life where you're afraid of demonic possession, or you entertain it. But the amount of people, including myself, who are reluctant to go into the water because of the film Jaws, I think it's we could call it, and forgive the use of the word, especially in these times, we could call it a bit of a pandemic. It didn't affect everyone, but it affected enough people around the world after seeing that film that, you know, once upon a time we might have gone happily playing in the sea, and now you stop and you think every time the right. So with that, yeah, excellent taste in film. I agree with you.